pick a title.
Okay, do your thing.
All right. So of the things that you said that would make a good title, I will just go through the list a little slowly. If you hear one you like, just kind of give me an indication, and we'll pick from the ones you like. I want to do this again. The most cringeworthy way a prank could play out. Could you just text him? I did a thing in line with how I've lived it. Having faked a boyfriend. Queer, quiet, and scribble. What color was your parachute? And the most annoying trait in the world.
Ooh. I think the most annoying trait in the world would be the one that would make me go, ooh.
All right. Welcome to season 6, episode 19, the most annoying trait in the world.
Awesome. Excellent.
Cool. This is the podcast. I'm Vance Bastion here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Hey.
And we're really glad you're here with us. Our guest today is Nathan Burgoine. Nathan grew up a reader and studied literature in university while making a living as a bookseller. A cat lover, Nathan managed to fall in love and marry Daniel, who is a confirmed dog person. Their ongoing cat or dog détente ended with the rescue of a 6-year-old husky named Coach, who gave them 4 wonderful years before crossing the Rainbow Bridge. Since then, they've rescued Max, another husky, who's much younger and very determined to be a bed dog. They live in Ottawa, Canada, where socialized healthcare and gay marriage have yet to cause the sky to cave in. Nathan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, the all-powerful gays, with our marriage, we're going to bring storms and earthquakes and
I was going to say, I want those powers. I know,
right? If only we had the power that they wish that we had, or said we had,
Right? Give us a little bit of negotiation power.
I know, right? Yeah.
All right. So for folks who haven't heard your first 2 interviews with us, give us a quick how you became an author, but then let's talk about what you've been up to.
All right. So the very quick version is I became an author because I was a bookseller. I was writing reviews for books that I loved. And like many gay men of a certain age, the only gay books I bumped into much later in life, even though they existed. Gatekeepers had kept them out of my hands. So when I was in the bookstore, I found all these wonderful books. And I bumped into stories that were funny, which was such a unique experience after reading a lot of gay literature obviously from the AIDS era where it wasn't supposed to be funny.
No.
But I found a caper by a man named Rob Burns the night we met, and I fell in love with it. It was just the funniest crime heist, gay, queer story I'd read ever. I actually got kicked out of a pizza parlor because I was laughing too loud while I was reading it. And I wrote this terrible review of it at like 2:00 in the morning on every website I could find. This was when e-reviews and online websites were just sort of becoming as big as they were. And he actually reached out, which is something you should never do, but he reached out and said, thank you. And it started a dialogue. I asked him if he had any other books. He didn't, but he suggested like 4 or 5 other authors. Before I knew it, I'd met this core group of queer authors, and 1 or 2 of them were putting out a collection of gay romance stories, and they asked me if I wanted to try writing a romance story because they knew I sort of scribbled short stories for myself.
Because of that brilliantly written review.
Yeah.
He knows all the good words.
Yeah. So I wrote a little short story for them. They liked it. I was like, yeah, I could check that off my list. And then immediately I'm like, I want to do that again. And I want to do that again. And that was it. I was hooked. Yeah.
Excellent.
Nice. So I need to throw a little teaser in there for folks who haven't heard your previous interviews. Go listen to his first one, because that's where he talks about how to write a good 3-sentence review, which I still use to this day. After you shared your formula, I was like, that's perfectly brilliant. Brilliant, man. Brilliant.
My bookseller hat.
So, what have you been up to?
I have been up to figuring out how to write slowly. The most recent thing I just released in May, yes, was Village Fool, which is my latest village novella. It came entirely because we were talking with some friends about holiday romances and how Christmas gets the lion's share. I had jokingly said, it was either me or Kaylee Malcolm, one of us jokingly said, like, why are there no April Fool's Day? Why does that never get any joy? And it turned out there were. We actually looked through a bunch. And I thought, well, that actually sounds kind of fun and challenging. And I thought of a joke or a prank, and then I thought of the most cringeworthy way the prank could play out, and then I started writing it, and then it was done. It just sort of flew out of my pen. So it's about a guy who his friend's prank is to take his phone when he's not paying attention and change all the contact names.
Oh no.
And he's got this crush on his former physiotherapist. And his friend, before they leave, they meet up in the mornings and have coffee, says, hey, send me some updates about your workout, because he's going to the gym where he sees the physiotherapist. And so he thinks he's sending his friend updates about all these sort of lascivious thoughts he's having about the physiotherapist, but he's actually sending them to the physiotherapist. So he spends the whole morning telling his crush things about his crush's butt.
That's awesome.
Well, at least the physiotherapist can realize that all his good hard work is paying off.
Yeah. And he's not that kind of guy. Like he's such a quiet, reserved. He's the kind of person, it was a real stretch for me to write this character who, when faced with someone he was attracted to, shuts down and can't put together a coherent sentence to save his life, but if he's dealing with a client or if he's in a professional setting, the words just come. So it was a lot of fun to write a character that close to home and then put him in this horrible cringe position. And yeah.
So was that what kicked off the series then?
No, this is actually let me think. So it started with Handmade Holidays, which was a Christmas story.
Okay.
And of Echoes Born, all the short stories, a lot of them take place in the village. There's Saving the Date, Faux Ho Ho, and then Village Fool. So there were 5 now with that one, and then there'll be 6 coming up.
So what has it been like to write a short fiction series?
I love it. So for me, short fiction's always been my comfort zone. And writing novellas, especially for romance, is a favorite length. Because I find with romance, full-length romance novels, especially if they are contemporary romances, I often find as a reader, I get a little annoyed at the characters for not straightening out their problems a bit faster. It's different in romantic intrigue or paranormal romance because there's other things going on.
Right.
But if we're talking just a straightforward contemporary romance, I often find them frustrating.
Or unless you're writing about scenes which will go on forever because they're just in their own personal hell. And oh my Lord.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, I don't think he actually likes me. Could you just text him? So when you're writing a novella, there's time to have that big problem and overcome it, and then you're done. Yeah. So for me, that's why it's the sweet spot of writing length. But it also lets me build on what I've already done and introduce a couple of characters, just as side characters in one book that can then be main characters in the next, or have just recurring characters. There's a septuagenarian lesbian woman, Marion, who appears in most of the village. You get little glimpses of how her life is going and stuff. And I enjoy doing that. And it feels very much like a more connected world with living and breathing people that are moving through it. And I like building on what I've already done. And also the biggest thing, and this is such a sad little me thing, is a novella or a short story takes so much shorter amount of time. I get to have the hit of I did a thing. Whereas a novel, that's like a year at least. It's just so much work.
It's true though. I mean, it's very true. And then there's also the post-publication cycle where you have to market it.
Yep.
And you've hit on the formula of having past books in a series really helps you market. I mean,
yes, the long tail is a thing for a reason, and especially in romance. And I've also found that romance readers especially enjoy novella length. You will get the reviews that are like, "Oh, I wish it was longer," but it's not in a negative way. They're not saying this was too short. They're just I would have liked to stay in this world a little longer. And that's great because they can. There's other books.
Saying you're giving them that. Very artfully giving them that, I might add.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, the covers. Oh, Matthew Bright's covers are gorgeous.
Yes,
Yeah, they are.
He does really beautiful work.
Will Baz put one up for us?
You know what? I can't. They're digital.
And the Kindle is in another room.
Yeah, I was gonna say my iPad is actually downstairs. My husband is actually updating his iPad, so the other one's downstairs right now. So I don't actually have a way to show the cover. That's embarrassing.
Well, I'll find it and post it. I'll put it.
Okay.
All right. So you also included found family as a topic, and I was curious as to where you were going with this. Is it characters or personal?
It's both. So one of my little crusades when I write my romances is to try to write queerness a little more in line with how I've lived it. So especially if we're talking holiday romances, there's this tendency to add reconciliation plots, or to have this, the whole community comes around after being kind of jerks to the queer people. Whereas my holidays tend to focus around a bunch of queer people. So the found family aspect is something I tend to lean in pretty heavily. Now and then that has led to some interesting feedback. One of my beta readers said, "Oh my God, both this person's parents are alive. That's a first for you." I'm like, "Ooh, okay. It's been a while apparently since I did that." And I'm trying to make sure that I show a bit of a range. So like Handmade Holidays was 100% my response to those holiday romances where the parents have kicked the kid out. And then at the end, everybody comes together and everything's okay and everything's forgiven, which never seems real to me. When I read that, it feels completely opposed to how I feel about happy endings. Like, that doesn't actually feel happy to me to get back in touch with these horrible people. So that one, his parents kick him out. It's off page. Like right at the beginning, you learn that, and that's it. They're just never in the book again. And he gets his happy ending, and his happy ending is about finding these other people, which is what my happy ending was about. So I wanted to build on that. And so with Fo Ho, I did the thing that a lot of us go through as well, which is he has a couple of family members that he really likes, and the rest are garbage. So when he has to go home for holidays, he's like, okay, I gotta take off the queer mask, put on the good son mask, and just try to swallow everything I feel for the next however many days. And this sucks. And added to that, the stress of him having faked a boyfriend because it was a way to get out of Thanksgiving. So he didn't want to go home for Thanksgiving. His roommate jumped into the Zoom call and was like, "Oh, no, we're dating. We're going to go see my family for Thanksgiving." And then his sister decides to get married at Christmas, and that's the family member he really cares about. So of course they both get an invitation. And so he's invited to this big family Christmas wedding. He's like, "This is awful." So that was that story. And again, he doesn't reconcile with those family members. Like, it's not a good experience to be around them, and he wouldn't want more of it. Mm-hmm. In fact, he gets to kick a conservative in the face, which got some very interesting review comments. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Oh,
in a bad way or a good way?
Both. So there's kind of this, I'm not going to call it a rule, but there's definitely advice that floats around in romance circles that I find suspect. And one of those pieces of advice is not to put politics in your romance. Okay. Which is impossible if you're writing queer romance.
Right, exactly.
We exist. That's political.
We are political just by existing.
So I decided to, again, this was one of those active choice things. I leaned in the other direction, and I gave Silas's family a history of being Alberta conservatives. And Alberta's kind of like Canada's Texas. And so it's like, if you're conservative in Alberta, it's big oil, it's money, it's. So his father was a member of parliament, which would be sort of like a senator, I guess. And his eldest brother is now taking that position over and has run a campaign. His eldest brother's name is Manny, and he ran his whole campaign as Manny Up. It's all the layers of awful. And so he hates these people. I don't know how it happened exactly. Just sort of as I was writing, I decided to throw the scene in where he's taking kickboxing lessons earlier in the book, and it's just for an amusing moment. And at the end, he ends up kicking the brother in the face. And I really enjoyed writing that. I'm like, no, I'm going to put the politics in there. This is what it's like. Exactly. So yeah, that got a lot of notice on both sides for sure. There were people who were very unhappy about that. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know why you're reading queer romance.
Right, exactly. Right. What part of this are you not getting? When in doubt, always punch a Nazi. Anyways.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, because you've made the reference several times, are you a fan of Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Masks?
Yes and no. I think it's got a fantastic framework, but I think it can be pretty darn Western.
Very.
So, I mean, I like it for what it is. And yes, and I certainly had to study it in university doing the lit degree thing. But I'm really enjoying right now trying to find some narratives that are outside the hero path or the more traditional narrative. Well, I say traditional Western, let's be honest, frameworks of narratives. Reading Johnny Appleseed right now, which I don't know if that's making any noise south of the border. Canadian author. Really, really enjoying it. And it's not a linear narrative style story. I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent.
All right. So what general shenanigans have you been up to, queer or otherwise?
Physiotherapy. Yeah.
How did you turn that into shenanigans?
Oh,
Yeah.
God. So
and when will that book come out?
Yeah, actually, it came out. Village Fool, his physiotherapist. Yeah, I changed a huge chunk of that story because of what was happening. The second husky that you mentioned, Max, he and I were out just before the pandemic really hit. We were out walking winter Canada. He saw a squirrel. I happened to be standing on some ice at the time, and he saw the squirrel sort of there and behind me. And I was holding the leash with his hand, and he leapt and jumped that way. And I did this sort of half pirouette skid collapse thing as my arm went all the way across my chest. And I basically ruined every tendon from here to here.
Wow.
It was basically one long bruise all the way down and swollen. It was just a disaster. I got to go to physiotherapy for about a month and a half before everything got shut down. And then I had to do it remotely over video, which let me tell you, that's quite the adventure. Yeah, and I couldn't type. I couldn't even pick up a plate, an empty plate. It hurt so much, and I would drop the plate. It would have been better if it had actually snapped, because then they could have just done some surgery or whatever. But instead, it was all torn and frayed, and it was just a mess.
That takes forever to
so, yeah, that became basically my life for about 6 months. Squeezing tennis balls, TENS, which is this thing where they put electrical currents and run them through to try to sort of reset things. I had acupuncture done in this really neat way. So where it was all knotting up and where the nerves were all clenching it, they put in an acupuncture needle. And I guess one of the side effects of an acupuncture needle is it sort of breaks the electrical whatever circuit. I'm not sure the word I should be using. And it makes it let go. And then of course the whole area just explodes into this bruise as well. So I basically looked like I had been attacked for about 3 months. It was awful. And as a result, I couldn't type. Luckily, I'm right-handed, so I could write on paper. And I actually ended up dedicating Village Fool to everybody who had a moment where they thought they should suggest voice to text for me, but then shut up and didn't, because of course I would have tried that. Because that was relentless. The number of people who were like, hey, have you thought about voice to text? I'm like, gosh, no, I've never even. And I get that comes from a nice place of people wanting to offer solutions to a perceived problem. But after about the 500th time, someone says, hey, have you ever considered that? Like, oh, of course I have, and I tried and it didn't work for me. So yeah, it was a bit relentless. And unfortunately, when everything locked down, that was really all I could do. And all I was able to do was squeeze tennis balls and roll a can of beans around the palm of my hand. And it was tedious. It's getting better. It's been a year and a half, and I can type for maybe about an hour at a time now before it starts to lock up again. So getting there.
I had seen a couple of years ago now a study that said that when you write with a pencil on a piece of paper, it actually activates more creative centers in your brain than typing. Right. Did you experience that?
Yeah, being forced to do it all on paper and then type it up later, I've learned two things. One, my penmanship is atrocious. And two, I can't.
Honey, what does it say?
Yeah.
Are we talking
it's because I'm trying to go as fast. Should have been a doctor
atrocious?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's because I'm trying to go as fast as I could type.
Okay.
And not because I was I was an early adopter of keyboarding. I was taking, back when it was called keyboarding in school.
Right.
Like I do touch type. I don't look down at my fingers while I type, so I can do like 110, 120 words per minute, no problem. So trying to write it on paper, it's just excruciating. And I've learned all these little sort of tricks for myself now, where I don't use the character's name anymore. I just use the capital letter. Like things like that. So these notes, they're terrible. But it's enough that when I go to the keyboard, it flows. Right. And I'm very good at skipping things that I've got a symbol now for the word said, things like that. Like I wish I'd learned shorthand, honestly, but
that reminds me kind of like when I forget the author's name who took it over, but when Margaret Mitchell, they wanted a sequel, they wanted Scarlet. That's what the author who took it up did. They hand wrote Gone with the Wind, going over and just, duplicating it by hand so that they could get the feel of the rhythm because slowing it down like that gave them the feel of, okay, this is how Margaret approached it. This is how the prose works. Yeah. This is, I can imagine any kind of exercise like that would be just like, oh my God,
Yeah. And it's funny, when I type, I am watching it on the screen and I'm a lot more conscious of like, ooh, that's a wall of text, or on a paper, the whole layout is so much wider, like you don't notice. And I find I've ended up allowing myself some things that maybe I wouldn't have if I'd seen it on the screen as I was going. So yeah, it's certainly a different process. Yeah. And I'm enjoying it. But yeah.
Yeah, with my new iPad and iPencil, their whole script to text thing has made me wonder if I should try a book that way.
You know what? That's one thing I have not tried yet. And there's a new iPad that's downstairs right now.
But have you thought about text to speech or speech to text? I'm just throwing it out there,
Yeah,
text to
gosh,
speech.
no, you're the first person to suggest it in a year and a half.
Yeah. All right. Well, if no other shenanigans have taken place.
No, I mean, other than training the dog, he knows about like 5 or 6 new tricks. I don't know how a lot of people have kept themselves sane through the sort of lockdown. I walk the dog. That is literally what I do and write. So I feel it's funny. At the beginning of lockdown, like every 2 weeks or so, friends would get together and have a Zoom call and say, so what's new? And now we've struck that question. We don't ask each other like, how you been? What you doing? It's just like,
picking up the conversation. Picking up the conversation from where it ended last time. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, in that vein, are you ready for some RFQs?
Sure.
Okay, well, let's find out how you've been coping with the last year and so forth. So what habit has mattered to you the most in getting through the last year or so?
Routine. So I was always a bit of a bullet journaler, but now I find I make that today's to-do list. And that's been a huge chunk. And even if it's something as stupid as putting away the laundry, just having something to like, this is a thing I accomplished today, it's gone. And teaching the dog silly tricks.
There you go. All right. What's one thing you did more of in 2020 that you enjoyed and will continue to do?
RPGs. So we were playing a board game on Board Game Nights, Gloomhaven, which is still going to be something we'll do when we can all get back together again. But because that isn't something we could play over Zooms, I've gotten involved in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign and a Mutants and Masterminds campaign, and I will love to do more of that. It scratches a different creative itch, and I'm loving it. Yeah.
I wonder if anybody, maybe they have, you guys know, you guys play games, I'm sure, but I wonder if anybody's taken, because Stranger Things deals with the kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, if they've ever taken Stranger Things as a Dungeons and Dragons kind of RPG thing.
Kind of. Wizards of the Coast took the campaign that the kids were playing and produced it as a playable module with the kids' characters.
Cool. Okay. That's excellent.
I've got it because that's one of our favorite shows.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Yeah, and season 4 is right around the corner. Excellent. All right. Well, what's one thing you did less of in 2020 that you realize you probably don't need anymore? Speech to text.
Yeah, that's something I tried and hated. Actually, no, it might sound silly, but this is going to make me sound like such a slob. But I don't know if you guys used to change your clothes absolutely every day, no matter what. But the longer lockdown went on, the more I realized that yesterday's t-shirt is just fine. And why am I making myself do laundry like this as often as I am? And I know that may sound ridiculous, but just because someone
just wear it till it falls off.
Yeah, no, but just because someone else walking their dog might see me in the same sweater I was wearing yesterday is not a reason to dirty a new sweater. And just, we're having all these little moments of like, why did we do this? And that is definitely one of them, is realizing like, I did not dirty this sweater. I sat in the house all day. Like,
I just did like yesterday. I was wearing shorts and I crawled into bed and just slept in them. And I got up and I'm like, still wearing them. Yep. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. There are like weeks where the laundry is just underwear.
Good for you. Okay. Yeah. What makes you, that made me feel better about myself. All right. What makes you feel motivated, inspired, and excited?
Still reading. So there's nothing I like more than reading something and having it spark an idea of my own. I have been, because of the Mutants and Masterminds thing, I have been rewatching and rereading a lot of superhero stuff, and it makes me want to queer it up all the more, because as you know, it doesn't generally tend to be particularly queer. Although I reread Young Avengers and I reread Runaways, and those were wonderful, and I'm so happy they exist. WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, I'd forgotten how much I enjoy the superhero milieu, and that's definitely sparking ideas. So anything superheroic right now seems to be what's sort of crawling into my head.
All right. Well, what 3 words describe you best? And then we'll ask your husband.
Oh, ouch. Okay, what 3 words describe you best? How about, I'm definitely going to put queer in there. Quiet, as much as this probably doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I'm going to say scribble.
Scribble. Okay. All right. Well, what's your proudest accomplishment?
The 2 novellas this year. The fact that even though I'm doing it like on paper with a pencil and then typing it up when I can, technically I've completed 3 novellas this year, but there are 2 of them that are coming out this year. So
excellent. Okay. Well, last question. What's the most daring thing you've ever done?
Okay. So ever changes the context of that question. I used to be afraid of heights. And I have this thing that I don't like being afraid of stuff. So I went skydiving.
You faced your fear.
Yeah. But I also booked bungee jumping because I thought, maybe I'll do the bungee jump first, and then the skydiving. And then the bungee jumping company shut down. And so I had no choice. So I went from step 0 to skydiving. And that was perhaps not the way to do that, but it was great. And the funny thing is I loved it. And I will never, ever do it again, but I had a great time. The training was incredible. It was like a
I suddenly had a vision of Goldie Hawn in Private Benjamin.
Yeah. I mean, it was a blast, and it was so much fun. And I remember they had this thing where they asked you, they said that they would give you like half your money back if you could answer a question when it was over. And so that was part of the training. You're like, okay, I'm paying attention to everything they say because they're going to ask me some random little detail when this is over. So I want half my money back. And the question turned out to be, what color was your parachute? And I had no idea. And the first thing you do is check your corners. Like, you're supposed to like look and make sure everything's worked right? But no idea what the hell the color of my parachute was. And I asked them how many people got it right. And they're like, almost no one, almost never. It's just not the detail that's sinking in while this
right. Yeah, because you're so like the awareness of everything is inundating you that
So yeah, I always loved that. Yeah,
a pig could fly by and you probably wouldn't notice it.
Yep.
Well, you made it through the race.
And you dropped a hint to our next question. I was going to ask what's coming up next, but it sounds like you've got a novella coming up.
I have two coming up next. One I'm allowed to talk about. A Little Village Blend will be out in July. That's soon. And it's another village story, and this time it puts a little dose of the magic back in. So for the people who read Of Echoes Born, my short story collection, which had quite a lot of spec fic tucked along there, there's a novella in there called A Little Village Magic, where Gabriel, who doesn't really believe in anything, finds out it doesn't matter when magic believes in him. He ends up sort of helping this artist repaint a mural, and it sort of revitalizes the village. So this is the next story in that collection, and it focuses on the guy who runs the little tea shop, Nice Teas, Ivan. His sister has the most annoying trait in the world. She can read tea leaves, and she's never wrong. So his sister is never wrong, which is just the worst. Anyway, so he gets a crush on this soldier who keeps dropping by and seems very grumpy. And his sister does what she always does and reads his tea leaves without his permission, and tells him that, no, this is absolutely positively not the man for you. And Ivan can't help it. He's like, well, I still like him. And so the story is all about him trying to figure out what he's supposed to do with his feelings. Ivan's own little power is that when he's brewing teas for people, if he touches the cup or if he touches the tea, he can add a little bit of oomph to it. So if you need a little bit of willpower, he'll make you an Earl Grey. If you need a little bit of patience, he'll make you some blueberry or whatever. And so his powers are a little bit more about the here and now as opposed to the future, like his sister. And so it's a little romance novella about a guy who has been 100% told, no, that's not the person for you. And he's like, I don't care.
Awesome. And you said July for that one?
Yes, July.
All right. Where's the best place for people to follow you for news on that?
If you are a Twitterer, I am on Twitter as Nathan Burgoine. If you are an Instagrammer, I am on there as well. If you are a Facebooker, I am there. I think I'm on pretty much all the social medias. I'm not very good at them, but I do post updates when things happen. I don't have a newsletter yet. I know, bad. But I do have my blog, which is, if you just go to nathanburgoyne.com, it'll aim you there. It's 'n.wordpress.com, but it's easier just to type in Nathan Burgoyne. I'm the only one, which is one of the nice things about having a weird surname like mine.
That is awesome.
You know, it's really funny. I just saw a game show where somebody was talking about writing in their blog. And another contestant in the game show said, "What are we in 2009? Blogs?"
Oh,
I was like, wow, okay. I guess that's where we are.
I was writing a YA. I was working on a YA, and you have to shift your mindset, right, to a current present day teenager. And so one of the things was one of the things that happens, he ends up stuck in a town because of some downed trees across the highway. And he finds out that the town, like the police officer's like, hey, follow the town's social media and then you'll know as soon as this is dealt with. And he goes looking for it. It's like, oh God, all they have is Facebook and Twitter. It's like,
no one's TikToking their way through this.
Like, are they not going to TikTok me? You know, like
it's true though.
You know what lately, what's been my biggest thrill lately is I actually watch it on YouTube, but I mean, obviously I can go look at TikTok itself, but it's the queer boys of that generation and what they're doing on TikTok. Oh my God. I'm just like, it's queerdom to a level.
Yeah. Like, and when they started betting and like replying to each other and I love it. Yeah.
But it's the most queer thing I've ever seen. And these queer kids are just taking off with it. And it makes me so proud because it's everything my generation, the generation before me, it's what we fought for. And to see these kids run with it, it's like, it's the coolest fucking thing. I watch sometimes I don't get some of the refs and I'm like, okay, but I still love to watch them because it just makes me happy that I get to see these queer boys, do some things that you just go, wow, that would have never flown in my era,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It was amazing when I was doing the first YA novel. I got to talk to not actually talk to, there was this whole thing, but I got to interact with a bunch of GSAs in the city. And I'm like, oh my God, they have GSAs in their high school. And then they were talking about, well, the GSA I had in middle school wasn't as good. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're what? Like,
Yeah.
Imagine being in grade 4, 5, and 6 and knowing that you're allowed to be who you are. How amazing would that be? You know,
Can't so far.
Well, but yeah, but you got, but
experience.
Vance, you guys have that queer high school. I mean,
We
that,
do in Madison. Yes, Madison has Shabazz, which not just queer. I mean, I think it's labeled experimental, but it's where kids
queer kids can
of
be
all stripes can just be themselves.
Yeah.
And it has some pretty cool teachers that teach some, like, going back to something you mentioned, one of my personal friends teaches there, and he actually used Dungeons and Dragons to help teach the kids statistics.
Yeah.
Excellent. You know, it's just, I don't know. I get inspired when I hear stories like that, when I really get to hear how much of progress we've made, even if it's under the radar of the media and everything. But when you see these queer kids using social media, you know, it's funny. I watch all these politicians and they're trying to use the Twitter, that they're twatting all over the place, as Kathy Griffin says. But you know, and yet you see AOC, and I don't care what the fuck you throw at her, she'll just slap your shit down because she really gets the medium. She knows exactly how to cut where she needs to. And it's just like, you have to have that respect. I watch I follow David Hogg, and I've been following his journey. And, you know, yesterday he just pointed out, he says, if someone in the NRA shoots me, you've proved my point. And I'm like, okay, there was something major that went down there that he's not fully commenting on. But again, you know, these kids really get how to drive whatever message they're putting out there. It's really amazing. It truly
every
is.
now and then I go check Greta's profile just to see what someone
Oh,
said.
I know. Right? Right?
She's brilliant.
I think about the only other one I think who gets it at that level is Chasten Buttigieg. Chasten really has a big following amongst the younger kids. But then again, he taught drama. Right. So, you know, you can kind of see it. But yeah, it's amazing to see these queer people living their best lives. And, you know, I mean, just the fact that they post queer TikToks where the boys kiss each other. Can you imagine any of us doing that back and putting it up somewhere for people to see? You know?
Nope, that's like painting a big target on your butt.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You know, really. And it was funny you mentioned GSAs. In my high school, this was like 19, but we had a GSA at my high school, and it was so new a concept, and was run by this little woman who was like a Ruth Westheimer knockoff.
Dr. Ruth?
Yeah, Dr. Ruth. She literally had the accent. She was a small little old lady, and she was so open about talking about all things queer. And it was funny because it was such a new concept. We didn't even call it a GSA. I forget what we called it, but that wasn't the name for it, but it was exactly what they're doing with those things now. And it's just weird to think about how much freer it is. And it's just kind of a beautiful thing. It makes me smile. You know?
Me too.
Yeah.
There's really not much you can follow that with.
You know what this looks like? We need one more person. Maybe Fred Feely. We need one more person, and we would be the Golden Girls queer version.
All right, who would you be?
Sophia.
Nathan.
Ooh, I feel like I spend a lot of time talking about like back in the day, so I'd probably be the one saying 1929. Picture it.
Sophia.
Yeah.
All right, and I suppose as the wrangler who keeps everything moving forward, that makes me Dorothy.
Yeah, pretty much.
I will wear that crown with pride.
Right. Well, I don't know, Nathan. I could see you. You've got a great Betty White kind of humor going. You know, I mean.
Oh yeah, distracted and not. You know, I love her.
Or just saying what you said.
The entire series going. Did she have a stroke? Like. How many brothers does she have now?
So the best part about living in the state next door to where that character is from is every time she started telling one of the stories, my dad would be listening and he'd be like, I think I've been to that village. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Ooh, I imagine it's been said a lot, but being gentle with yourself right now, especially given everything that is going on. I have barely read a book a week this year, and I'm usually quite a bit further ahead than that. And I did that awful thing where I set a little tracker for myself. And it has been saying you're a book behind, or you're so I finally turned it off. So I'm like, no one is handling life right now at the level they could handle it a year ago. So I think that, and then the flip side to that is I've dealt with PTSD before, and I use the past tense on that word, knowing that it's not something you ever actually pack away. But I have a feeling that we're all coming out of, hopefully, an extended period of what I would call like a low-level trauma. And we've been fighting our way through something for over a year. And I think people are going to have the same sort of reaction I have, or maybe they'll have the same sort of reaction I had. So when my trauma moment happened, I was fine for months, and then I wasn't. And it's something I don't think gets talked about a lot with PTSD, that there can be this weird nonsensical delay where you're fine and you're like, oh, I'm fine. And then when you're not fine, you're like, well, I don't understand why this is happening, because I've been fine. So it's obviously not that thing, but it's absolutely that thing. So maybe that would be something I would put out there as some words of wisdom, is you might fall apart later than you think. And that's okay.
No, true. When I went through my cancer, it was the same kind of thing. The cancer support group, you don't know, when it will hit you, what it is that you're really struggling with. Yeah. And it may not be the cancer itself. It could be something a tangent from that would actually, make that thing come on. And it's true. And I think one thing that's happened with last year is, I think globally, we've all realized, we really are connected much more than we care to admit. Pre-COVID, we see people in other countries suffering. We know what that's like. And so it's a collective. It's like Vance said, we have the before time. Yes. That's now in our consciousness, and when we're going to opening everything up, I don't know that it's going to be exactly what it used to be.
It won't. I kind of hope it isn't.
Same here. I hope we've learned something.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah. That would be nice, but then you have Trumpites, so
I was going to say, my faith in humanity is not high enough to hope for it. It would be nice.
You look at it askance with some great.
I'm not going to put any hopes on that.
Not holding my breath.
All right, folks, this is Written on the Edge. The Rope Podcast is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.ropepodcast.com. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to Nathan Burgoine for being with us. Nathan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Now, go out there, pick up Village Fool, and then follow Nathan on the socials so you get more news about the release of Village Blend when it's ready. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.